Hello, everyone. We can see the participants box is filling up. So what we're going to do is just wait another couple of minutes just to maximize the number of people that will be here. But the session is going to be recorded and it will be shared afterwards. We'll just wait another minute or so just to maximize the number of participants. So we'll get rolling in about 60 seconds. I'm ready if you are, Sarah.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for giving up time in your busy schedules to join us here. The Employment Hero end of tax year planning process. We're going to see if we can guide you through some tips and tricks to minimize stress and to maximize the amount of time you've got for other business. My name's Lee Clements. I have been with Employment Hero for just under a couple of years, and Sarah is joining as well, my colleague in the IMPS team, and we're going to guide you through today's session. Just to remind you as well that this session is being recorded. The links and the recording will be shared afterwards, but also if you want to participate, feel free to add into the chat, and we'll touch on this again later, any queries that you might have, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. So here's today's agenda. We're going to take you through some key dates for the end of tax year, what to expect from year end, any updates. Obviously, we had the budget yesterday, so there's quite a big one to talk about. Processing your final payroll of the 23-24 tax year, whether or not that be weekly or fortnightly or monthly or even annually. Any tips and support available, and then Q&A towards the end of the session. But at this point, I'm going to hand over to Sarah.
Thanks, Lee. Good morning, everyone. What I would encourage you to do is if you do have any questions, if there's anything that you want to ask us that we will come back to at the end, if you pop it in the Q&A or pop it in the chat box, we'll get back to you. We are going to ask you a question as to what is your pain point when it comes to year end. Is it the uncertainty? What is it? If you could pop that in the chat as well, just so we can kind of capture what it is that people are most fearful of with year end, if that's the correct term. And we're going to touch on that and hopefully alleviate those fears as we go through. So key dates, the dates for your diary that we have are the 5th of April is the end of the UK tax year. The 19th of April is when the HMRC expect to have received your RTI submission, your final FPS, which will tie off your PAYE tax year. The 31st of May is the deadline for your returns to your employees. They would expect to receive a P60. To receive a P60, you have to be employed on the 5th of April. If they leave within that tax month and you've issued a P45, they won't get a P60. The 6th of July is the P11D submission. So that is for any benefits that haven't been payrolled. You make a separate P11D submission to HMRC, and the 22nd of July is the payment of Class 1A National Insurance on benefits in kind. That must be with the HMRC by that date. So I do like a good meme. So as we go through, there will be a few payroll related memes. And I think we've all, as payroll people, felt a bit like this when it starts to get towards the month end, even, never mind the tax year end. So payroll year end, what's it all about? It signals the end of the UK tax year. And as an employer, on the 5th of April, the HMRC would require you to compile and then submit your annual return for all of your staff to them, to let them know of all of the liabilities that should have been already paid over to them for each of your members of staff on your payroll. And the deadline for submission is the 19th of April, 2024. So Patrick is feeling a little bit swamped during year end, and we just wanted to know, as I said a little bit earlier, what would be your what's your pain point with payroll year end? What is it that people don't like about year end? Let me just have a look at the chat. If anyone's dropped in there.
There seems to be a few questions trickling into the chat.
Brilliant. Tracy, that's a really good one. We'll get back to that one at the end. Sandy wants to understand the process, but hoping that the payroll provider will do it all. To be honest, Sandy, Employment Hero does take a lot of the automation, and a lot of it is done for you, so that's really good news. And Lee will come back to that later as he shows you kind of all of the lack of buttons really, Lee, that you need in order to get your year-end submission through to HMRC.
Mm-hmm.
And Emma's pain point is making sure that the system updates are in the system before the end of March so you can roll over the new year. Emma, you don't need to worry about that. We're on it. We've got a full team that are ready for this. And even the Chancellor yesterday can't throw us off. We're on it. It's great. Do you want to roll over? That's great. Thanks, Lee. So these are the UK legislation updates that's going to be affecting the payroll. The tax codes, there is no change to the standard tax code at 1257L. We're sticking with that for this tax year as well, and there's no uplifts for anybody. There may be some P9s and P6s come down for individuals, but as a rule, there's nothing. It's not being uplifted for the majority of people. Any week one, month one statuses that you have on your staff at the moment will be automatically cleared down when you roll over into the new tax year. The tax thresholds for England, Wales and Northern Ireland aren't changing. The basic rate remains at 20%, higher rate at 40%, and the additional rate tax is remaining at 45%. If you check the gov.uk website, you can get the where those triggers kind of come into play. The tax thresholds for Scotland there is a slight change to those. The PAYE thresholds have been increased. The higher rate tax is going from 47 to 48%, and a new tax band called the advanced rate tax that's being introduced, and that's calculated at 47%. National insurance, which is a hot topic at the moment, for the employees, bit of good news for them. following yesterday's budget, it will be reduced down to 8% on NIable earnings above the UEL. Anything above that will be at 2%. And there is a new a new NI threshold called the investment zone upper secondary threshold. But for more details of that, again, that's all available for you on the UK website, the gov.uk website. The employer's national insurance is going to remain at 13.8%, and there's no change to the apprenticeship levy, which is also remain at 15,000 and the charge at 0.5. The statutory payments from April are increasing. Statutory sick is going up to 116.75, and statutory parental pay, including adoption pay, will be going up to £184.03. And student loans, the rates for those, because there's lots of different plan types and bandings, if you just check the gov.uk website for that. The national minimum wage, there is an uplift in the national minimum wage from the 1st of April. And employment allowance is going to remain at £5,000. You must make sure that you check your eligibility to claim it on the gov.uk website, and just make sure that you are still eligible for that allowance annually, and send your declaration through to the HMRC. Veterans National Insurance. In April 2021, HMRC introduced a zero rate of employers Class 1 NI for qualifying veterans. There is a special NI category of V dedicated to that. So it's something that's quite it's unusual and not really talked about. So we thought we would include it to highlight it, really, that if you do have any veterans working for you, it might be worth having a look into this and see if it applies to you, and it could save you some money. And other kind of legislation changes just to be aware of that are going to come into play, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, is that the reintroduction of the 12.07% leave accrual is back, and rolled up leave is being reintroduced. This was something years ago that casual workers kind of work towards in order to accrue leave. And that is just being reintroduced back into the legislation. So that might be something to be aware of as well. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Sarah. Actually, I'm just going to roll back a couple of screens because there's a question that's come in on the chat from Angarad. So at the moment, Angarad is correct that within the payroll software, this parental pay rate of 184.03 is not yet in there. Because of the budget yesterday, there is going to be an update that will take place behind the scenes and will flow through to all of the businesses and all of our users soon. So the 189 that's in there is currently a forecast amount that we entered, but now that we know it's going to be 184 and that there are other legislative changes that need to take place, the update will take place behind the scenes in the coming weeks, and you will be notified across the business screen. When you load into the payroll, there will be a notification running across the top of the screen to say when that has applied, but it should be soon. I'm just going to roll forward to, and also just touching on that as well. Obviously, the benefits of using cloud software is that all of these changes can take place and at short notice behind the scenes. So you don't need to worry about when you roll into April. Everything will be available, everything will be ready and compliant for you. Additionally, One of the things that our users may not know too much about is that we actually have an automation setting. So for your simpler payrolls, or even for your more complicated, depending on how deep dive you want to go, you can actually automate the creation of and finalization of the payrolls. So if you aren't aware of the automation settings, please let us know. And what we can do is we can highlight that to more clients just to make, because again, that will reduce a lot of admin and manual clicking on your side if you can get the system to do most of the work for you. And your role really then becomes to review rather than to process. So now that we've looked at what is coming, obviously we need to tie off, as Sarah said earlier, the end of the 23-24 tax year for you. So as I'm sure you're all aware, when you load into your pay run, whether or not it be your final weekly or fortnightly or monthly or even your annual payroll, you're going to need to finalize it. You're going to need to lock it so that you can send your final FPS, your final EPS, you can generate your P60 end of year earnings certificates and P11Ds if they are relevant to you. So after you have finalized, on the next screen, as part of the submissions to HMRC, if the system will be asking you if it is your final pay run of the tax year, and this will be ticked by default. So if you don't want this to be your final pay run for the tax year, you will need to untick this box before you finalize the payroll. I think I saw a question in the chat earlier from one of our viewers who had asked if you're going to review it. We'll come back to that at the end in the Q&A. For your EPS, it's usually good practice to send EPSs throughout the course of the year, because again, it can be used to offset the employment allowance, to reclaim any statutory maternity, paternity or adoption pay. But if you haven't sent an EPS so far during the tax year, then when you're finalizing your when you have finished your final payroll, you can go to the report screen and the EPS setting is just here. It will ask you what period are you submitting for? And I've taken this screenshot from one of my test businesses where there was a monthly payroll, and I'm ticking that this is, again, the final EPS for the tax year. I know we've talked about the automation, but just to make you aware, if you weren't already, that the EPS can be automated. The system can do this for you. One less thing to worry about, one less administrative task to remember. So in the HMRC settings screen, right at the very bottom, if you want to enact this, you can select a date that you want the EPS to be sent automatically by the system. Just a word of warning, if you are implementing your software, if your FPS is still in test mode and you are running a parallel run in our software, please do not turn on the automated EPS until after you've gone live, because this will automatically send irrespective of whether or not you are live, and it could confuse HMRC. So after you've done your final FPS, your final EPS, to generate the P60s, again, from the report screen, we'll just be able to click on the P60 option. It will take you through to the next screen, and it'll ask you, you'll be able to view or show the P60s. You can download them to review. When you're happy with them, you can publish using the actions button in the top right-hand corner. If, however, you realize that you need to revise or amend one of the ones that's been published, the individual employee lines at the bottom here in the red square, under the actions button, there is an unpublish option. So you'll be able to revoke that P60, revise and republish at a later date. And finally, if it applies to you, the P11Ds as well. So again, from the reports option, same column as the other two, the P11D reports. The P11D screen is almost identical to the P60 screen on the basis that you can generate the P11Ds, you can view them, you can download them. So hopefully that will have covered quite a few questions about what you'll be needing to do as part of your final payroll. But I suppose really our tips are, don't panic. You've got time, you've got the ability to be able to go back and correct anything within your dates. With it being the final tax year, with the final pay run of the tax year, we would encourage you to really check that final payroll just to make sure that there's as much information in there as possible and nothing's been missed. And also for the FPSs and the EPSs, just make sure that you've seen an acknowledgement from HMRC that they've confirmed a receipt. If you have any questions about the process, or if you need help, we do have an excellent support team here in the UK. They can be contacted by clicking on the question mark in the bottom right hand corner. It will open a little chat window and you can type out your query and they will respond to you by email. If you are looking for our support library, or where we have articles including YouTube videos or a detailed breakdown, step-by-step guides, in the top right hand corner there is another question mark. By clicking on this, this will take you to our support library and you can start searching for anything for the topic that you need help on. But also by clicking on that question mark in the top right hand corner, from whatever screen you are in the payroll, the library will redirect you to what it thinks is the most appropriate article. So for example, if you're in timesheets and you click on that question mark, it will take you to the timesheets overview article. If you're in the HMRC settings and you click on the question mark, it will take you to the HMRC settings article, and so on. So two options to be able to help you in your hour of need if you need them. So at this point, we have asked for a few questions and queries to come in to see if we can deal with these here. Sarah, have you seen a common theme or?
There's a few come in that are all around what happens if you tick your final pay run box and then later discover that you need to make a change or an amendment.
Okie dokie, that's nothing to be worried about because as we all know, running the payrolls, if you have already submitted to HMRC and then you need to amend and resubmit, then all we would need to do is unlock that final pay run. We would need to go to the, if we're making a change to just one employee, we can open their earnings area, and in the bottom right hand corner is the actions button. And we'll need to click for late submission. And in the late submission function, we can select that this is a correction to earlier submission. So as long as that is ticked, the correction to earlier submission is being included in the revised, then when you finalize that pay run again, you can tick again to say that this is the final FPS and it will overwrite the previous one. Hopefully that's answered that one.
Brilliant. I think there's another one come in to see whether Barry has said, do we need to manually change leave to 12.07%, or will this be automated for new staff?
So at the moment, within your individual payroll setups, you will have included your leave categories or your leave allowance templates. So because they are likely to have been set up before this new legislation is coming in, it is likely that you will need to review those. So you may have set them up under older conditions where the 12.07 wasn't being used. So we would encourage you to review those before April, just to ensure that you have got everything covered.
There is one coming from Roxana. My employer gives me health insurance, which I have to pay tax on. Is that correct?
I believe so. I can't speak for your individual circumstances, but that to me sounds like a benefit in kind. So that if that's going to be either payrolled, if that can be applied through the payroll and you'll pay the additional tax for every month, for example, if you have a monthly payroll, or at the end of the year. But it sounds correct.
And I think we've probably got time for one more. Gary, I think this is my favourite question. Will the software recognise week 53 as the final submission, or would we take week 52? Week 53, if you've either got one or you want one, is usually the theme with week 53. So if the day that you pay falls on the 5th of April and you are one of the weekly type of payroll, so either weekly, fortnightly, 4-weekly, and that falls on the actual 5th of April, you would have a week 53. The software does have all of the capabilities of knowing that it's week 53, and it will apply the correct tax bands and thresholds to that. So it will be absolutely fine. But from previous experience with week 53, people either want one and they haven't got one, or they don't want one and they have got one. But it's always there's always that comedy around the week 53. Let's have a look. Have we got any more? Katie's asked, as a company, we pay for our employees' life and accident cover. Would this be a benefit in kind?
For that one, I would encourage you to check with HMRC. It sounds similar to maybe Roxana's question that came through earlier, but just to be 100% certain, check with HMRC, but that does sound correct.
Excellent. What we will do, everyone who has asked a question and we haven't got to it, we will take those questions away and we'll publish like a frequently asked questions with an answer in for you so that nobody's missed.
If you are after maybe a quicker response, then please do send your queries to the support team using either the widget or take a look in our support articles. Again, the question mark in the top right hand corner. That may answer your question sooner than we will.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. We've tried to pass on as much knowledge as we can towards the end of the tax year to try and make your life as easy as possible. So please be aware of your key dates, be aware of the help and support that's available to you, and also be aware of the automation and whether or not that can save you any time and effort. Please reach out to the support team if you do need any more detailed assistance. But thank you very much for attending. I feel like I need like sort of end theme music, credits roll.